And we are live. Welcome to Life Action Roleplay with Ryan Omega, and I have a guest host. Introduce yourself, please.
CW Fox.
Yes, it's good to have him back. And we also have our guest for today. Introduce yourselves, please.
I'm John Basset. I'm one of the creators of Twin Mask.
I'm Angela Basset.
All right. Thank you for...
She's the other creator of Twin Mask.
Whatever.
Details. Thank you for joining us today. So, shout-outs. Do we have any shout-outs for people today? Everyone's giving me blank stares.
Well,
I guess we're not used to the ones being the ones doing the shout-outs.
Well, what about for Kai? Because he starts his new LARP next week.
Yeah, his new Dystopia Rising NorCal LARP.
Yep.
In fact, he's not here because he's busy working on that, and it's a lot of work starting a LARP.
Yeah, Angela and I were helping him out all today.
Yeah, I was helping him yesterday with sanding one of the football armors so that it could take some paint. So what did you help him with?
I was filing down some of the masks. So Kai made a bunch of Raider masks, but he basically hand did a mold of them. But as a result, it has a whole bunch of jagged edges and things that aren't typical with store-bought masks. So it's basically filing those down such that the eye holes are the right size, aren't poking you when you're if you get a headshot or something like that. Yeah.
I just sewed a bunch of straps to things.
Straps are important.
Yep.
Otherwise things will fall down. And before we get going, I want to make sure that we thank our Patreon subscribers, including Twin Mask.
What?
Thank you. And our friends in Lost Colonies on the East Coast and Geeky Tees. And I want to also thank our new Patreon.
By the way, CW is sitting here in costume right now.
I'm only a part of a costume. This coat is actually, it serves the function as a coat. It keeps me warm when it is cold.
Yeah.
So that's why I brought it, 'cause it is a little bit cold.
Yeah, it's unseasonably Southern California weather. No, actually, I guess it is seasonably.
Oh, the weather's finally decent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not dying in the humidity and heat. Although, to be fair with CW, that is his normal clothing.
This coat is great. It's comfortable. Don't hate the coat.
Before I forget, I want to thank our new patrons, Brianna and Lee. Thank you so much for continuing to support us here at Life Action Roleplay. All right, so now we're going to get to topic. And the topic for tonight is the growth of LARP, which is a absolutely huge topic. So just personally on my end, when I started doing LARP a very long time ago, around 2000, a lot of live action role playing was just really, you didn't really talk about it to a lot of other people. It was an insider thing. But nowadays, the word LARP doesn't have the pejorative that it used to. Now people talk about it very openly. I think part of it is having to do a lot more with Dungeons and Dragons becoming more popular, and by extension, if you're sitting at a table role-playing, getting into costume and role-playing, especially the advent of cosplay becoming more popular, it seems like the next logical step in terms of how people interact with each other and find as an enjoyable hobby. And I just wanted to hear from the table what you thought about what added and contributed to why LARP has become as known as it is.
Well, for me, I started LARPing in the late 90s. So I've been around, for a decent amount of time. And, I don't necessarily know if I agree with it has that to do with D&D getting more popular. Maybe more with it trying to get a little bit out of that stigma. Role-playing games aren't just D&D anymore. And I think anything that's fun, given an infinite amount of time, people realize it's hey, this is awesome. during the 80s, D&D got a lot of bad stigma, and then LARP got hit with that too, and then there were movies like Mazes and Monsters and things that came out there, all these like anti-LARP, anti-role-playing propaganda. And I think in part it's, there isn't some sort of weird occult thing going on, that it's not, like we're not...
There's not? Are you sure?
Well, I also think it comes down to, like, I played D&D in high school. Actually, I started at the end of middle school. Played D&D at a comic book store, about as stereotypical nerd as you can get. But whenever the LARPers would come over, there was a couple of them. There was a guy at the store that would just make fun of them and like lay into them like very hard, and he did his best to stigmatize LARPing. But where we are playing D&D, but that for the longest time made me avoid LARP because those were the weird people. Little did I know.
See, I don't know. My experience was completely different. When I lived in Massachusetts, so this was like during middle school, late elementary school, I just about lived in a gaming store, kind of like what CW was describing. But the LARPers were like the people everyone looked up to, actually, because they're like the nerd jocks, like they're in better shape, like they have social skills, and they would come in and they'd tell all these really cool stories. And back then, my sister, so I'm the youngest, so my brother and sister are both older than me, and she was LARPing, and I'd hear all of her cool stories. And so like I was like, yeah, when I get older, when I like reach the minimum age requirement, I'm gonna start LARPing, and I did.
Wow, I wish I would have gone to your comic book store. I mean, literally, I could chase down to one guy poisoned LARPing for myself and a bunch of my friends for a decade plus.
In a lot of the online gaming communities, LARP will still get made fun of in that way. Like, you'll have like a WoW player who's just like hanging out on his computer all day long, making fun of LARPers who are going to fighter practices 2 times a week and then all weekend running around. Like, I mean,
#bad fantasy.
What was your? You keep track of your steps and stuff.
Yeah.
What was it last event?
So last event, I'll just do Saturday. Saturday was 17,000 steps, but the more interesting thing was my Fitbit keeps track of heart rate, and there's a fat burn zone in heart rate that usually hit when you're at peak exercise, and most like times you're at the gym or working out, you stay at that like for maybe an hour. I was at peak heart rate for 11 and a half hours.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah, I opened up the app and looked at it. I thought I should have been dead. But that was
and we are. Sunday, we are all dead.
But yeah, no, 11 and a half hours at peak heart rate. It was great. It was awful. It was great.
Yeah, it always blows my mind how, like, LARP has such a bad stigma with the, like, online gamers, because it's like, oh, okay, I'm sorry that we're actually being active and like interfacing with people on a real level, I mean, I'm not saying that like, the online gaming community is all like, basement trolls, but like, I'm not saying that at all because I know that's not true. But I feel like the ones that do give LARPers shit probably fall into that category a little bit.
Well, I think it comes down to is don't give people shit for the shit they enjoy. It's
Well,
just
true.
that simple.
Yeah.
Very true.
Or things you don't understand, because
Yeah.
a lot of it also comes down to ignorance.
Well, from the outside, like if you watch a LARP from the outside and you just see people throwing beanbags and hitting people with swords and yelling at each other and getting in character, you miss that part of your brain that switches to immersion. You believe it. When you're in the game, it's a vastly different experience than watching the game.
Or a lot of people think that they're seeing an event, but in reality, they're seeing a fighter practice, or they're seeing one of the like war games, which often use like high schools and parks like that. But like, yeah, I don't think most people see good video of an actual immersive weekend-long LARP event that's at a camp.
Yeah, and even if they see it, it's while it might look good, if you produce it well, being there is an entirely different
Absolutely.
thing. When your brain starts to believe and switches to that immersive, I've passed the threshold, everything's real.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that I really, really love and appreciate about the trailer that Landon made for us recently.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It really, from my perspective, like, shows exactly like how I feel playing a LARP to like the outside person. Like I feel like it's very like you can watch the trailer and be like, wow, okay, like I get a better idea of what it's actually like versus like not being there in person.
I was playing this one LARP, and after this one scene, so it was a modern day LARP. It was hunters, and this guy was in a basement, and the basement like got raided, and like it was like a 3 a.m. sort of attack, and it was just him trying to defend like this hostage. And afterwards, he was like, "Guys, like I was in Afghanistan. I've been shot at, and that was more scary than like any of this stuff overseas." And I mean, obviously, that's just one person's experience or comment, or even if he's exaggerating, it's kind of what CW was saying. It's like those emotions are real, and you're like
as soon as you buy in, as soon as you're there and present there, as soon as you're in that right headspace. You forget it's a beanbag. You forget it's a foam sword. It feels real, and that's the little part of the brain that lets you like read a book and get into the scene, or watch a movie and start to feel for the characters. As soon as you commit and buy in, the entire game changes.
Yeah, I want to get back to Angela's mention of Landon's trailer. Like that trailer has about 10,000 views on Facebook at the moment. And it is surreal how much that trailer really has, even if it was related to Twin Mask or not, really has changed like a few people's perception on what a LARP is. Because it does take someone who is in a LARP to be able to convey that perspective. For many years, there have been production companies, specifically reality TV companies, that always have wanted to capture a LARP. But they usually come in with the angle of this is kind of odd or this is kind of interesting. And whenever you ask them to participate in that story, they keep a detached feeling or detached eye from it. So whatever they're trying to push becomes insincere. So that trailer meant a lot to me just looking at it. Like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is what I feel as a player that's now externally expressed in a trailer.
It also did a good job of showing non-combat events in a way that is interesting and engaging. Typically, most videos you see is about people fighting, because and they don't show, like, there's a scene in there where it's the Guild of Academics. Everybody's in the mage tent, like looking over books and trying to help each other, and it looked engaging. I want to do that.
And by the way, anyone listening who wants to look at the trailer, it's on our website. It's twinmask.com.
Yeah, you should give it a look. It really showcases all the many facets of LARP really well, except for the shady side, because those guys hide really well.
Yeah.
Or they should hide really well.
Yeah, I mean, another thing that it also does is, I lost my train of thought. It makes me forget what I was about to say.
It was just that good. Just forget.
Yeah, shoot.
Should have called it willpower.
It just went by, out the window. Oh, no, okay, I remember. It shows the game in such a way that it doesn't, like, it's not making it pretend like it's a real thing. Like, we don't have, like, prop weapons in place of LARP weapons to try to make it look like a real, like, fantasy movie where we're not pretending to be, like, these roles. It's still showing the actual LARP aspects. It's not trying to hide them as reality. I don't know if that makes sense, but
it's an honest portrayal.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not like trying to take a LARP event and shoot it so that it looks like an episode of Game of Thrones and everything's real. It's you are watching a LARP happening. You can see the aspects of it that are not real, but it doesn't matter because the emotions are real. Like, you can see in the video that everything that's happening is very much real to the people that are involved there.
Yeah, so I want to turn this a little bit towards Twin Mask itself, because I remember being at Game 1 when there was about, like 30 to 40 people, I think?
Oh, not even. I mean, 20, like around 20 people, I'd say. It was pretty small.
Right, and then in recent games, we were looking at originally, like, I guess around 100 people, and then the last game was how many?
170.
It was 176.
176. You round up at that.
I mean, yeah.
Did you add the staff in? If you had the staff in, we were like 195.
Yeah, I kind of lost track of the actual number when I was counting the sign-in sheet. I lost track at like I think 167. So like with staff and like permanent NPCs, we were probably around 180.
Wow.
Yeah, so a little bit different than the dark and stormy night that the game began.
Game one.
Yeah.
So I guess like the big questions are when you're dealing with something that is scaling up that fast, how do you manage like A, the LARP, and B, like the roleplay experience for so many people at that point?
Even in the beginning days, I used to tell people, enjoy it while it's here, because the most immersive LARPs that I've ever had, the craziest experiences that I've had in LARP were all really tiny, like 5-person LARP events and stuff like that, because you get such intimate care, like attention. Your character, every aspect of your backstory ends up coming up, and like staff can focus on you in a way that they can't focus on when you get to the 200 stage. And so I was telling all my players at that point, and you got to experience that. So we used to send Sicario all these like love letters and fan letters, like every single game we'd send like him like all these different things from his character history, and then we killed him because of his character history, and I'm not saying that we've tried to maintain as much of that personal touch as we possibly can. But we definitely had to switch focus rather from the individual to groups. Now it's no longer like what's Sicario doing. It's more what do we have going on for the political characters? What's going on for the assassin-y type characters? What's going on for the knights, the guards, the rangers, the scholars? And you kind of want to make sure that you have all of those archetypes covered. It's required massive restructuring with the staff team. CW could probably talk about the story elements of that. Even things like we didn't used to have a mandatory NPC shift, but that was back when 3 staff members running around as demons could fight half the town or the entire town themselves.
I think you launched the mandatory staff ship on my first game, because I remember players grumbling about it.
Oh, yeah. But you know what? Like the PEL, PEL is a post-event letter. So that's player feedback that we get every single event. The PELs drastically improved after we instituted mandatory NPC shift. They might not like it when they're on their shift, but they absolutely love it when now they're no longer fighting 3, like it's no longer 20 versus 3. Now it's like 15 versus 8. That's still like a 2-to-1 ratio versus,
And we've gotten really clever with how we use our NPCs to make their numbers appear more with how we stage and deliver mods. But even then, even with, 20 to 30 players in NPC shift, it's still a struggle to get that weight of like we're outnumbered. Because it's 30 versus 150 now.
Right.
Yeah.
And there are definitely like tricky aspects about like you want to make sure that your shifts are properly allocated in terms of like you have an even amount of NPCs during, or at least you want them during the shifts you need them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like for the big fights and whatnot, and yeah, I mean it's tricky. Like I mean logistics, which is primarily what Angela deals with, is its own.
Yeah.
Sorry, the staff team in the last year has gone over some huge renovations to make us able to manage a game of this size. I think the most successful thing we've done is the logistics team. The logistics team enables story team and myself to tell stories without having to worry about everything that's needed to make it go. And you guys literally are the heartbeat of the game. You make it run. You make it actually able to happen.
So
thank you.
If you were to look at our structure, you kind of have me who looks over everything and fills in any department that kind of needs my help. And then under that you have Angela and CW, who are both here. CW runs our story team. Angela runs the logistics team. So logistics handles everything based on economy. Every like if CW's running a mod, he might run up and he's like, "Hey, can you write me 20 rum tags?" And then Angela's like, "God damn it!" But she has one of her people start writing tags. And then he gets to run back and continue to set up the mod, but then 20 minutes later he can come back and it's already done for him. Or someone who's building a crafted item can come in, wait in line, or Angela can talk about it too, since it's our team.
Yeah, no, like one of the main differences is like before we actually had the logistics team. I know that like I was part of the staff team for parts of this, and I know that whenever like players would come up and they would need something like tags, or they would do like research actions or anything like that, it would immediately take that staff member away from what they were doing, and it just would like put a hold on whatever was going on, and it was just really like congestive to the actual like process of running the story. Yep. So now we have logistics staff and logistics advocates who are in the same location, like, players know where to go. They go there, they get their tags, they get their, like, whatever. Like, anything that they need, they come to logistics, and then we'll figure out where to, like, allocate what they need or, like, who to contact for what, because we do still sometimes have to, like, get story staff involved, but it runs so much smoother rather than just having random like players show up at NPC camp and be like, "Hey, I need this," So
an example, like in the past, I will be out storytelling, running a mod with a bunch of players, and I could get stopped 20 times from like walking out of NPC camp on my way to run the mod with questions thrown at me, like lore bids. I turned in my prayer action, research, talk to John. Just all this stuff. So by the time I got to the mod, not only had I forgotten what I was doing, I'm now like 20 minutes late. Yeah. Whereas now I can tell them, or they already know players have been trained to go to logistics, and when I'm done with a mod, I go by logistics, hands me a stack of stuff I need to reply to. I'll reply to it, and then I'll hand it to logistics, and logistics will get it to where it needs to go. I don't have to stop telling stories for more than 5-10 minutes, or before I would be out of game for hours throughout the course of a game, handling all the stuff that slowed me down.
Yeah.
Logistics also covers a lot more. Like that's a lot of what they do during the game, but it also covers medical. It also covers like legal, marketing, like getting the site booked,
check-in setup.
Check-in setup. But I mean that's more of what people see.
Yeah.
I'm more just saying like I don't know. It's a huge department with a lot of subcategories. And then similarly with story, we have subcategories that focus on each branch, like I said, to make sure politics are covered or whatever. And CW can explain that better.
Yeah, I'll go in briefly because I'm the host today.
Oh, okay.
But sure. Yeah, one of the things I noticed is as the story grew and as more and more players came into it, it was hard to tell a contiguous story with everybody involved, especially keeping continuity in check between various story members running plot. Like, did my thing that I just bid on, that I just ran a story, that's going to totally derail somebody else's story. There's no continuity. Oh, there's very little continuity checks. There's like 15 of us. There's a lot of us on story, depending upon what game you have. We add in the advocates and whatnot. And
an advocate is basically a player who has certain staff powers. So for a rather than NPCing, they kind of step on for that amount of time, but do a staff role.
Yeah.
So imagine trying to write a book, and there's 10 other writers trying to write different chapters than you, and you have to reconcile it and make sure it all makes sense at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. It was a headache and a half to keep continuity going and keep up with the massive amounts of content needed to entertain 100 plus people. So one of the things we did recently was divide the plot into segments, silos. Under various themes. Knights is called garrison, civics is peasants and merchants, and underworld and academic plot and politics and religious, and each of those sections have subsections. And then we made those silos of plot we made people responsible for them.
Yeah. Which also empowers those staff members.
Yeah, it empowered them to tell stories inside of their wedge of plot without having to worry about having to get every little thing checked with everybody else. Now it's other people's responsibility to check in with that person to make sure their continuity matches.
Yeah, like if I'm running a night plot line, right? Like let's say night is my silo. And I want to do something where a knight gets assassinated by the Assassin's Guild or whatever that is. Rather than me just writing whatever, I'd say like, hey, I need to check in with the underworld person. You look at our little hierarchy, you know exactly who that person is that you need to talk to. You talk to them, they're like, oh, yeah, there's no, like, Assassin's Guild. Pick one of these groups. You know?
and in fact, if you pick this group, I can tie your story into another story.
Exactly. And then it becomes part of a greater, like...
So as head of story, I can then talk to each of my silo captains and tell them what I want to tell, like the overall arc and how I want these things to interweave, and go, all right, here's what I need you to do. Go make it work inside your own continuity. And they come back and we weave the story together. It allowed us to tell much more complex stories with a lot fewer continuity errors.
Yeah, the continuity errors are a big thing that you want to avoid, especially in a lore-heavy game like us. Yeah. Like, we have numerous books that are in play, and you don't want to contradict, yourselves, and you don't want players thinking, oh, if you talk to this person, this staff member, they'll tell you one thing, and I talk to this staff member when I want to get my way in this other thing, and so communication is super important, but not only that, writing things down. I had a meeting yesterday that we were talking about, like, one of the staff members wanted to create certain, like, named artifacts, and I'm like, okay, we can potentially do that, but you need to make sure. So we have this master Excel document that has so many things. It's like every NPC, it's like the entire timeline, it's like all the spells, and it's just, you can like look at different tabs depending on what you need, and it's all the information at a glance. So I'm like, yeah, you can include that, but we need to make a tab in that document that lists artifacts. And then it's going to say like the artifact name and it like where it's been used and what the history is and all that stuff, because staff members come and go, like you could get burnt out, you could have like a relationship falling out, you could have, whatever. And you don't want, in a lot of games, if a staff member leaves, all their plot lines just die. If there's good communication, everything's written down and, everyone knows what's up, you probably hand it off to a different staff member and they're going to run it differently, sure, but they can continue and roll over that and they can make it their own, but without losing whatever was established in years prior.
Yeah, keeping continuity is key, especially since as players are trained to look for things that are different. Those are the plot points and hooks that stick out. Well, unfortunately, a continuity error is different.
Right.
And they'll hook onto a continuity error, and then suddenly you gotta do something with that. And at Twin Mask, we don't roll things back. We go with it. Like, once it happens, it happens.
Yeah.
And then we figure out how to deal with it.
Yeah.
At what point did you feel became the tipping point for Twin Mask where you realized, oh my god, this is now a big LARP?
We plateaued at 60, and we're stuck at that plateau for 2-3 years.
Yeah.
So I guess once we eventually broke that, and we've just been kind of climbing ever since, I think that was a big thing. And a lot of that, too, changed with a different emphasis. A lot of what we try to do now, at least with the rules that I write and a lot of the direction of our story is, in addition to the major plot arcs, we try to direct the players back to themselves. So we try to do stuff that encourages the players to naturally engage with one another. We don't want you sitting in the tavern just waiting for a plot lead to show up and say, like, adventure this way. We want you to, join. Like, there was a play last game, completely done by players. They like sold tickets, had people. I heard it was fantastic. I'm sad that I didn't see it.
Yeah.
But
Me too.
But I mean, honestly, that's frequently what happens with player-driven stuff. The staff don't get to see it, but we hear it's great.
Empowering people to tell their own stories was
Yeah.
Yeah, and some of it's also supported, at least with our rule system. Like we have a skill called military drill. And what this does is after a half-hour RP of like training people, and you know there are plenty of rules that govern this, but they all get a buff. But what that means is we can be prepping a mod, and meanwhile a player with this skill has 20 players lined out, and he's like shouting orders to them and
doing push-ups. Or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, typically it's not push-ups,
Yeah.
but and it's also cool because you can be learning in-game stuff too. Like you could be practicing formations. He could be like, "Hey, if I say this, if I yell this, know that like the tavern's being attacked and everyone rally. So we're going to practice this." You know, it's a designated in-character time that they're all incentivized due to mechanics, but they're entertaining themselves and they're having a blast doing it. So we have a bunch of skills like that, and yeah, so it's just a different way that we push things.
I think probably about the time that you started writing the last rulebook update was probably when we started to switch the focus like on trying to support like a larger player base, and like you were saying, just moving towards having more things to encourage interaction with each other. And like
I think players can also sort of tell if a game is growing or not. You know, if there haven't been any rulebook updates in your game, or like the staff hasn't been growing or whatever, like if you haven't noticed tangible improvements to your LARP, people start to kind of like wonder why, or like they start to sense that stagnation. Mm-hmm. So I think, yeah, when we launched that big rule book update, which actually took a while to get done because there were some major changes in it. Mm-hmm. But once that got launched and we started doing other things and we got to announce some of the smaller things that we were doing, people could tell how much work we were putting into it, and they just want to be a part of that too. Mm-hmm. So
I remember when that rule book got updated, because I actually got a little scared because so much of it was so different from what I was used to, mm-hmm. that I was trying to figure out what would my PC be doing in this world. And even for a couple of games, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go around and continue to do things, and hopefully things will figure themselves out. But it was also interesting that the players themselves started to look at that rule book, start to break it down very intensely, and then figure out what worked, mm-hmm. and what needed like rework, and then communicated that with everybody, at least as far as I know they did, and then tried to figure out like what to do like as a group to make everything work for their characters as well as the group.
So for the people listening who won't be familiar with our rule book, two of the major changes that we did, which is why it required such a big overhaul, is we completely revamped the economy. And that was very important because economy, the players naturally engage with one another. If you have all the mechanisms of a good functioning economy in your game, now I want a super cool sword. Well, now I need to go talk to the miner, and he has some goods, but now I don't have any money, so now I need to do a mission for Angela's person who has money and is willing to pay me for stuff. Mm-hmm. Then I go back to CW, but now he's sold it to you, Ryan, mm-hmm. and now I get the ore, but oh crap, now I need someone to make it into, and now I go to this other person, and it creates this like now that's 7 different conversations that I've had. All of these are really cool RP interactions. It encourages movement. You're not just sitting in the tavern. And that was super important, and it was important to get it right too. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that everything's perfect. We're still ironing out some kinks, but it's actually going pretty damn well. Mm-hmm. And then the other change is we used to have a mandatory retirement system, such that you got to a certain build, we gave you kind of this epic send-off, mm-hmm. and your character went off to like slay dragons and go off into the sunset. We found that while it created awesome narratives and helped to limit the low player to high player level gap, mm-hmm. We would lose the player. Some of our most dedicated players who had been with us the entire span of their character, they just wouldn't come back after they hit retirement. So for basically the health of the game, we decided to remove that, and then we're implementing some other stuff too to still help with the level gap. Mm-hmm. And we also decided to increase the starting level, starting character point total that you can play with, again to limit that that gap in the beginning. But anyway, these, you know, it wasn't as simple as just saying you have more build, because it affects, you know, the cost of every single skill. Sorry. Yeah, it was a lot of work, and there were tons of other stuff. I'm glad it's done. And
in part.
Yeah, what are you working on now?
Yeah, now we're just overhauling religion and our influence system, and we're adding a bardic tree. And
Oh, you're gonna go with that now? I've heard about the bardic tree.
oh yeah, 100%. It's already in the rule book. Just
Not in the one that is released yet.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, bardic magic, from what I understand, was always intended to be in the game. It just wasn't.
In a slightly different form than it is now, but I'm really excited about it. And I don't know if you want me to tangent on it, but
I'm down for anything, because like this is an exclusive, folks.
well, I'll just talk about the concept difference. I hate how in D&D. If you're a bard and bards get the most hate, everyone makes fun of them, right? Well, why do they get made fun of? The bard sings a song, gives you like a +1 to hit, you know, awesome. Except it's such a negligible bonus that no individual person cares. But from the game designer's perspective, they're like, yeah, but you have to multiply that +1 by all the people listening, and it's actually really powerful. But meanwhile, the fighter's making fun of you, the cleric's making fun of you, no one cares. Like, and here's the thing. So in school, I was a double major, philosophy and theater. I knew a lot of theater people, a ton of actors, and they're not singing songs trying to like inspire the crowd to do great deeds. Like, screw that. Like, they get on stage, they get to be awesome, and they want that applause for themselves, you know? They're, you know, like, you know, they want that attention, and they feed off that attention. And so the direction that we're going with the bardic tree is you do your performance, and then you take all of that energy and it makes you better, you know? So
It's all about me.
It's plam. The bards have plam.
no one knows what that is.
Plam.
plam?
So plam. Thank you, Ashley. Stands for please look at me.
Sorry. That's
Okay.
amazing.
Okay, so I'll give you guys, and for the Twin Mask people listening, a sneak peek. Okay, so there's one bardic skill that we're putting in the game. You do your performance, and then for the next 3 hours, if you get dropped into weakness state, so like you're dropped into bleed out and then healed, so for 3 minutes you're in a weakened state before you can go back and fight. If you get someone to tell you how awesome you are, you can immediately remove your own weakness. So it's like, tell me, the performance was great, wasn't it? Sicario, you were there, you clapped. You're like, yes, it was fantastic.
Yes,
You're like, remove weakness. Yeah, I know. You don't need to. You're embarrassing me.
Yeah, I stopped drinking for a little bit. Yes.
And then he runs off, gets dropped again, and he's like, tell me my...
Oh my god.
I don't know. I just think that certain things like that, again, mid-combat will create cool RP scenes. And there's a ton of other things that aren't quite as ridiculous. But, you know, that tells the tone a little bit, though. It's... like another one is drinking song. You sing for 3 minutes of a drinking song, and then doubles the effect of a food item that you eat. So in other words, like you sing a drinking song, you drink your beer gives you a buff. Cool.
Yeah, not the character point addition food items though.
Yeah, also alcohol we don't allow. Beer would be like an in character, like pretending something's beer.
Yes.
Yeah, but there are, as part of the crafting system upgrade, there are a whole bunch of consumable, like alchemists or cooks can make food items and drink items that have various effects.
Yep.
All right, so there are a bunch of questions from the audience.
Bring them on, Ryan.
I know. You actually answered many of them in the discussion, so that was kind of cool. I'm actually trying to figure out certain things that haven't been addressed. So I think Jordan mentioned a lot of questions about challenges, but you tended to address them all. What has become easier as this game has expanded that you found?
Easier?
I mean, I think we did kind of talk about that, at least from my perspective. I will go back to the logistics aspect, because I think that has at the very least made Story's life somewhat easier.
Oh, it has. It has. Trust
Yeah.
me. I hate lore bits.
Well, I mean, we still have to bug you guys for stuff occasionally.
I hate writing tags.
Okay.
And all the other stuff. It's great. You guys are awesome. Don't leave.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that things were forced to get more streamlined. In other words, back in the day, I'd write a story, play the NPC, be the monster. Like, there were times where the mods were taking too long, and so I'd just be like, we need to fight combat, but all of our NPCs were engaged getting ready for some mod that was still going to take like a half hour to get out, and I'm like, the PCs are bored right now, and I just like throw on like random garb, pick up a weapon, and just charge out, and I'm like thinking of my stats as I'm attacking them, I mean, that was in the days when we were like 20 people, where I could wear every single hat, and now, I mean, there's some events that I don't even get to play NPCs.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
It was an interesting change. I went from when I first started, I would go and I would bring, 4 to 7 different characters and wear them all once or twice throughout the event. Last time I was out in character like once or twice, but there's just so much more to do.
Yeah, and it's to the point now that I used to know every single plot line, what every character did over the course of an event. I would know every single plot line. And now, even our staff team is so big that, sometimes I'll hear about a mod that went out that, I mean, it was authorized. It was like a conversation that they had with CW or had gotten cleared, or they did it during their shift or something. But I'll hear about it after the event, and it's totally fine. It just has to do with the size. There are people that I'll see, and I'm like, "Oh, it must be your first event." They're like, "No, it's my 5th event." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I'm gonna put that shoe back in my mouth," and just with the size, it you no longer have the ability to see everything the way that you used to. So again, this kind of goes back down to communication becomes so much more important. You can't have things just always in your head anymore. And yeah.
Talon asks if you could take one lesson that you've learned from running TM now and take it back in time to when you first started running this game, what would it be and why?
Okay, so that one, I know exactly what my answer would be. When you first create your game, you can pick kind of whatever you want, all right? No one is, the game doesn't exist. No one's going to get upset. In a lore-heavy game like ours, so mine has to do with the timeline. I wish that I could... I have 3 or 4 different ages. Each age is 2,150 years. Yes, that's for a specific astrology reason. It's part of a great age and all that stuff. Look it up. It's science. But anyway, so I thought it was cool at the time, but the reality is I wish I could reduce all that by 10. Then I would have more heroes that could overlap with other heroes, and I could have major events overlapping with other major events. And rather than I have 100-year gaps with very little development in it. Now, granted, that means that we have more spots that we can place things and play with things, but I actually would love so much more to have crossovers between major historical figures, and I think that would be really cool. That is extremely hard to do after the fact. Yeah. We have so many in-character books that it's unless you want to rip up every tome that we've ever written and put into game, unless you want to undo every continuity, which, hey, maybe we'll blow up the world. Who knows? We're crazy.
Dream magic.
TikTok.
Yeah.
Dream magic.
But that's the one thing that I would change.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because it's like, oh, so what happened in like that 1,000-year gap where there's no like known historical things that happened? I don't know. The peasants were happy. Everyone rejoiced. Life was great, and then shit happened.
What happened?
Like 1,000
And then the
years
PCs
later.
showed up.
But yeah.
How about you, Angela? What would you take from the game and take it back in time? What would you do?
That's a good question. My biggest issue I think right now is our database, which I don't know how to fix offhand anyway, so I don't know that I would necessarily have a way to go back and change it. But I have ideas on how to at least improve the current one, and I wish we had done it that way in the beginning, but I don't know. We need a better database. That's what I'm saying. I hate it.
Guys, if you're in the market, if you sell databases, Angela is looking.
Lots of IP.
It no joke, John. I'm pretty sure it took me at least 6 or 7 hours to print character sheets last game. Like, it was 2 different days of me sitting there after I got off work at 10:30 until 4 a.m, just printing character sheets and trying to not stab myself in the face. So yeah, it's that. I think that's my biggest thing, that when I eventually know how to fix it in the future, I will want to take that information back to the past.
So I'm going to use an appropriate question here from Kelsey. A weekend of pretty much being constantly in staff mode has to be difficult. Is there something that you do in those brief moments of calm to recenter yourself?
So while you're at an event, you don't really have time to think. At least I don't. I'm constantly putting out one fire and going to the next and going to the next. And it's not until Sunday. So we don't run game on Sunday. I know some games out there do. Mm-hmm. But on Sunday, we wake up, we pack up, and we go get food.
So a clarification on that. We run game on Sunday until about 4 to 6 a.m. in the morning.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then we go to bed.
When the sun comes up, we go to sleep. Enjoy those hour or two. And then
pack everything up and go home. Get food.
But the thing that I enjoy after every game is it's Sunday hearing feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, and honestly, I don't even know if it's a good game until Sunday, until the game is over and I hear players' reactions. And that's kind of weird because, you'd think that you'd know if the game's good or not when it's going on, but it's really just based on if people liked it or not, and that's kind of subjective too. So.
Yeah, and you don't get that feedback from people until Sunday because they're in game the entire event. So unless they actively come up to you during game and are like, "Hey, this was really awesome," or "Oh my god, I had this was not fun," or whatever. For the most part, we don't hear the feedback until after.
And compliments, it's players' enthusiasm and praise of the game that makes us excited and want to run the next game. And similarly, if players are super negative and get on us because it's oh, you told me the wrong year that this battle happened, and you're like, sorry, or you said Mordecai instead of Malachi, and okay, you're right, I did. You know what I mean? If a player gets upset for whatever reason, but if they're super negative, that can make us just
not want to do it.
not want to do it. It's all volunteers, and I think people sometimes lose sight of that. But fortunately, I think we have a great community. So I'm really proud of our game, proud of our players, and.
What about you, Angela? What do you do to recharge or recenter?
For me, I think it's a little bit easier at times because since between playing characters, I'm mostly just keeping an eye on logistics and making sure that everything's running smoothly. I think for me, I just sit in logistics for a little while and just try to reorganize my things. I know that sounds stupid, but all of my NPC stuff is just everywhere by the end of game, and I think that sometimes it's just nice to sit there in a moment of calm and just kind of reorganize things, because it also gets me back in a better headspace. Because like, you know, I'm sure a lot of people are like this. When you organize out like real life clutter, it kind of helps you declutter your brain. So I know that helps a lot. And just, you know, like getting to like occasionally step aside and like talk to people out of character just to kind of blow off steam or whatever. Like, I think it's easier for me because I have a lot of like out of character duties, whereas everybody else is either like out in character or whatever.
Yeah, mine was really simple. Amongst the other things, like player feedback, all that is good. But during gameplay itself, feed me.
Yeah.
I am very food motivated. I am like a fox. Like, bring me food. This is a reminder to all you out there. If you want me happy, feed me.
Yeah.
I don't. Even when people like hand me food, I very rarely eat all of it. I'm just too busy. Like,
yeah. We don't know how to adult at game because we're so busy running around doing everything else that we're like, oh shit, I didn't eat anything in like the last 8 hours.
8 hours, that's a great time window.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Most time it's like, I haven't eaten since last night.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not, you know, it's not anybody's fault. It's just we forget, and unless somebody actively reminds us sometimes, it's like, oh, yeah, you're right, I should probably eat something.
Well, that probably answers one of the questions. What can players do to help ease any growing pains? Sounds like we need to feed you, but
No.
but other things.
I would say be patient. There are a lot of you, and there's a lot of stories you want to tell. We really want you to have a great time, but there are a lot of you, and like after game or even before a game, every staff member gets bombarded by people. I know it's like, I'm just going to ask this quick question. There's 40 of you asking those quick questions.
you know,
be patient.
I have something that I think would be really good that players could do to help out us and help out the game. Anytime you're in character or even out of character, think about what you can be doing to make the experience better for those around you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just flat out, because you don't have to be a staff member to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're just in game, like you're a ranger, you could take a new player and be like, hey, I'm going to show you around town, and you show them each of the like hiding spots. You're like, when things get really bad, I like go into this nook, and you know, you can have cool bonding experiences, or you know, make your own plays like those other players, or do what. And when the game isn't going on, you know, I mean, be positive, be supportive, you know, like be welcoming to those around you. Mm-hmm. And LARP will always keep changing. And by that I mean your game. If you're playing, like when you were playing and there were 20 players, the game was great, but it was a different game than it is now. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that that's good or bad, and the game now is going to be different than the game in a year. And don't try to stop it. Don't try to make it into the game that it used to be. Just accept it and try to like cultivate it into an even better version of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And there are going to be new players that come in, and each of them are going to have like unique quirks, some good, some bad. You know, try to cultivate like them and work with them and help them grow. Some of your favorite people will like eventually leave. I mean, that's just the nature of things, and it's not bad.
Yeah.
So.
I think as long as, like John's saying, like as long as the community focuses on just being welcoming and friendly and inclusive, everything else about the game could potentially change around you, but as long as that one aspect stays the same, then the game will be good no matter what.
Yeah.
I know there's a director from a different game that kind of has that rule that John was kind of talking about, of like, always make sure that like the 5 people that are around you are having fun. Like if you go around and you're like, that's your mentality of like the people that are in my immediate vicinity, like engage them and make sure that they're having fun. Like if everybody kind of keeps that in mind, then, you know.
And if everyone has that mentality, I'm trying to make sure that you 3 are having fun, and you 3 are trying to make sure that I'm having fun, and now we're running around just like having shenanigans and getting into mischief, and Yeah, and it's going to be great regardless of whatever plot we throw at you. And whatever that plot is just going to be bonus.
The main point is just, as long as the community just stays awesome, then that is a huge help.
I know that playing Sicario, like, after he kind of stepped down from being governor and, like, not really involved with super politics, there was a part of me that was just trying to figure out, okay, what do I do now? But one of the best moves I feel like I've ever done with Sicario once he was no longer part of all of that government stuff was to try to find new players and kind of go, okay, so what are you doing? And then just give them influence. It's like, what do you want to learn? Okay, or I think with one with one player, he said, I want to start running a candy shop. I was like, oh, really? So I just kept asking him about this candy shop. And I'm like, okay, so let me help you with this candy shop. Just gave him economic influence because it was actually kind of cool that there was a goal. Whether the person actually went and did a candy shop doesn't matter to me. The fact that there was some kind of role play where there was something that was going to be involved or someone wanted to learn something, that's great. Here's some influence.
I'm just going to say that if you're hiding a candy shop from me, I will find it, and I will be mad.
They're going to go in, Qatar's going to be, like, in a little cage, like, just
saying, there's a candy shop, tell me where it is.
And the staff team then is run on nothing but sugar.
That's accurate.
Yeah. Or energy drinks.
I have a couple more questions from the audience. One of them is, because this game is getting as big as it is, what is your dream location for a site for LARP? That was asked by Sam and also Montana.
Oh, God.
Well,
go on for that.
It has to be within the region.
Yeah.
So basically someplace that is people are willing to drive to.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, you're saying that, but some of the properties we looked at, like on Death Mountain.
Yeah, it's...
You think I'm joking.
It's really, like, that's kind of something that I kind of almost wish I could go back on. I mean, I don't because I love the game and the people that are in the game, but SoCal is the worst location to try to get property to run a LARP on. And that's, like, 2020 hindsight. Because I mean, even in NorCal, like, it's cheaper, but yeah. So the main goal is to find something that's within, like, acceptable driving distance to our current player base.
I think we were looking at, like, at least 50-ish acres because you don't want to be LARPing next to some guy, like, mowing his lawn.
Yeah.
So there has to be, like, a sound buffer between your location and others.
Trees would be nice.
Yeah, we want shade because in California you'll die.
But
fortunately, if you have a property, though, you could create shade structures, too, though. So that's not even something that we'd write off. But plumbing is a big thing.
Yeah, I think one of the questions was, like, what was, like, our number one, like, wish list item for a permanent site? And I was telling John about the question, and I was like, I think bathrooms. Like, working bathrooms.
Showers.
Yeah. Like,
well, not even showers, like toilets.
Yeah.
Like
a bathroom building.
But what I'm getting at is, like, a shower. You can bring a portable shower. You could bring your own water. You could do that yourself if you really wanted to. But, like, plumbing, that's a necessity.
Yeah. And we all love porta potties.
Oh, yeah. So awesome.
Much.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I don't think they're the worst thing in the world, but if we got to pick, like, one trait, it would be plumbing. And again, plumbing enough to support a large group like that. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not worried about power. I'm not worried about even water. Like, you can buy water and bring it. If there's, like, a store nearby, that's a plus. But,
yeah, I mean, we've been running years on a site that has no potable water, so clearly
so that's not
we
a
can
big
function
deal.
without it.
Final question before we wrap up from Jordan. What are you most excited about for the future?
I mean, we're kind of to a point, like, with the numbers we're getting, if we can sustain it. And, I mean, honestly, that's a big if, because I don't want our staff team to burn out. I don't want us to implode on our own weight. And, like, as we continue to grow, we're going to have to continue to make infrastructure changes. It's also opening certain doors, too. Like, getting our own property seems more like an eventuality if we continue these numbers rather than just a pipe dream. and that's really, really exciting. Yeah, I don't know. Just land. Like, that's the dream. Land.
Homesteader.
I mean, that's literally been the dream since we were even playing, like, our old LARP back east. I mean, we would constantly talk about that. I'm sure that's, like, every LARPer's dream anyway, so it's not like we're saying anything that's new to anybody. But it's just, it was different from, like, dreaming about having a LARP property to play on as a player versus, like, us running a game and being able to actually host our own game on, like, our own property. Because then it's like, we're there, we can make whatever changes we want to the property. Like, we can add, like, buildings, we can add whatever, decoration, we can have mod sites. It's just many ideas.
And I get that there are legal restrictions on that sort of thing. Those are hoops that we'd have to run through when and if it becomes a thing. But
yeah,
right now we're just hoping to be able to periodically, like, put money aside and hopefully eventually, like, raise enough to make it a reality.
There's just so much going on with the game. Like, even just being able to get LARP more visible in so many other, like, capacities is just amazing. And I mean, like, thanks to, like, people that play our game, like, we've gotten, like, visibility from, like, all over the place. Like, I mean,
that's definitely one, like, personal goal of mine. I really have been wanting to change the way that American LARP is viewed, because I mean, we're not, like, everyone's seen the lightning bolt video. And honestly, even what CW was saying about, like, the immersion, like, those people probably had a blast. One guy was in stilts in that. They were probably having a lot of fun. But we don't run around in cardboard armor. We take immersion, we take costuming, we take our RP, we take everything very, very seriously, and our production value is super high. And anyway, I just want the representation of LARP, especially being an LA game. If there's a film shoot and they're doing LARP, like trying to portray LARP, I want them to portray LARP with actual metal armor. I want them to use, like, latex weapons. I want them to use the highest quality stuff that they can, because our hobby's fantastic.
We've gotten compliments from people in the LARP community in Europe, like, saying that, like, they thought the game looked awesome, which it's like, that's great. Like, that's exactly what we want, is we want the, like, somewhat negative stigma against American LARP to go away. We want it to get better, and, like, we want to help be, like,
though I will say that there is a balance between that and being welcoming to new players, because we run a fantasy medieval game. Not everyone has, like, boots. Shoes are a big thing. And if you're a brand new player, like, really the only thing that I want you to do is give an honest effort. I'm not expecting you to have this, like, the same costume level as, like, a 10-year vet. Just come in, have fun, and give it an honest effort. And over time, you will have that amazing costume.
Yeah.
But
our community is great, because our community will help you, like, evolve your character and costume. Like, we have, like, player organized trips to the fabricistic where they go and buy fabric and help each other make things. So, like, put in a good effort, but then realize that you'll pick up skills and friends and abilities to upgrade your costume over time.
Yeah.
John, what is your social media where people can see what you do?
What's the Twin Mask one? Twin Mask _LARP? Something like that?
It's Twin _Mask _LARP.
Let's go with that one. On Instagram. And then our website is www.twinmask.com.
And individual things, if you want to furnish that out?
Well, I am Angelic Ophelia with a dot in between, so angelic.ophelia on Instagram.
All right.
She has some awesome stuff. You should go check it out.
Thank you.
CW?
CW Fox, cwfox.com. You can find pretty much everything there. On Instagram, it's CW_Fox. And on Facebook, it is by CW Fox. BY.
And you can find me, Ryan Omega, on Facebook and Instagram under Ryan Omega, and Twitter under Ryan OMGA. All right. Thank you for joining us for today's episode. And is there anything else you want to say before we sign off?
We miss you, Sin and Kai.
Yeah, miss you, Sin and Kai.
I mean, I saw Kai an hour ago. Like,
Okay, yeah. So we don't miss Kai, is what John's saying.
yeah. But we do wish him good luck next week.
Yeah.
All right. Until next time. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.